Hello, so in this revision video, I'm going to be talking through different sociological explanations for the links between gender and crime. So before we get stuck into the different perspectives and concepts on this, we need to talk about statistics, and we're talking about official statistics here of crime. And according to official statistics, men commit 80% of recorded crime. And you can see from the graph here, the vast majority of crimes, according to official statistics, are committed by men. And we've got about the last 15 years or so of recorded crimes in England and Wales there. It's clear that the vast majority are committed by men. Also, the peak offending age is different. So for females, the peak offending age is 15, whereas for males, it's 18. So then we've got these questions. Why is it then, and this is what sociologists and criminologists kind of grappling with, why is it that men commit more? And then the flip side of that is, well, why is it that women commit less? Is it to do with social control? Is it to do with masculinity? So we need to start off with the official statistics. Obviously, we know that official statistics, we need to be critical of that, and we need to delve into that. But just taking that at face value for a second, why is it that the numbers of offences, it's dominated by males? So let's go all the way back to really early criminology. In the late 19th century, Lombroso, who believed in kind of biological explanations, thought that crime was kind of inherited. People had physical traits that meant they were more likely to be criminal. Lombroso talks about the fact that women are just less inclined to criminality. It's kind of a biological issue. Thomas, as well, in 1923, very similar. Men and women just have different personality traits, which means women are less likely to get involved in crime. Obviously, from a sociological point of view, we're not really interested in biological explanations. That doesn't really this is more for background rather than something that you would argue as a sociologist. And also, in terms of evaluation, it doesn't really explain changing crime rates. If it was biological, then crime rates would just stay the same. They'd be the same in every country, wouldn't they? But they're not. So it means it must be something to do with sociology. So these early criminologists, the biological explanations, it's just background rather than something that is helpful in the 21st century in kind of explaining the differing crime rates. So then we move on to the mid 20th century, and we're looking at functionalist explanations here. So functionalists are focused on socialization, and really that's the key to this. That Sutherland and Parsons both say that basically females are socialized to be kind of passive and more likely to be supervised, and therefore much less likely to commit crime, to be in a situation where crime is going to happen, or even to commit crime. Slightly differently, but still kind of functionalist subcultural, is Cohen, who talked about status frustration. And Cohen was talking about working class male youths, and saying that for these working class male youths, they may experience or likely to experience status frustration, which means they commit crime and deviance to gain status. And that was kind of unique for Cohen to working class males. So in terms of evaluation, what about changing crime rates? If it's all about socialization, well, it doesn't really explain how things might change. Also, I mean, Cohen talks about class, but there are class differences in crime rates for women, where the vast majority of female offenders are working class. So Sutherland and Parsons don't really get into that. Cohen doesn't really even discuss it. So we're not really getting a lot here that's hugely helpful. Again, this is kind of background, and it's quite useful to know it because we can evaluate it quite clearly. Okay. Another one that's an older study, and it's quite controversial, almost a kind of anti-feminist point, is by Otto Pollack, who coined this term the chivalry thesis. And Pollack says that the idea that men commit more crime than women is a complete myth, and basically that women are better at disguising their crimes and are more likely to be let off by the criminal justice system because of chivalry. So it, really, really kind of quite a kind of controversial one here, but again, it's quite a good one to know because it's so easy to evaluate, and a really good way to evaluate is to use something we're going to talk about more in a second, which is the concept of double deviance. That female offenders are, unlike Pollack, who says they get away with it, feminist sociologists argue that female offenders are more likely to be seen as a kind of doubly bad because they've gone against the law, but they've also gone against what it means to be female. So Pollack, quite outdated, quite controversial, but useful to know because it's good to kind of evaluate it. Okay, so now we're moving to more recent times and feminist sociologists. And really, for this group of feminist sociologists here, the key issue is social control. So, again, going back to that question, the kind of two-sided question of why is it that women commit less crime? For these feminist sociologists, the answer really is social control. So Heidenson coins this term double deviance, where women are seen as doubly deviant for breaking the law and going against gender stereotypes. Smart similarly talks about women commit less crime because of social control. Heidenson, in a later study, takes this further and says there's actually 4 forms of social control exerted upon women. Social control in the home. So you think about parental control, for example. So no, we don't want you going out late. We don't want you hanging around with those people. In public, so if women are doing things that they not supposed to be doing, seem to be unladylike, in the workplace and in social policy. So this kind of social control is not just coming from one place. It's kind of it's this 360-degree kind of social control that exerted on women in different ways, in different places, which stop them from being able to commit crime. Lee's talks specifically about sexual reputation. So ideas that if a woman is doing something that behaving in a way that man does, for example, in terms of relationships, they are kind of labeled in a certain way, they're targeted in a certain way, which makes women change their behavior. So and this idea that kind of sexual reputation is only really used against women. This idea that women are by behaving in a way where they have multiple partners, something like that's really only a criticism when it comes to women. If men do it, it's kind of seen as okay. In terms of evaluation here, really, I think the key one is what about class? Does this explain why, like I said before, the vast majority of female offenders are from working class backgrounds? So we could kind of get into that as well. But for these feminist sociologists, really, they're talking about why women commit less crime. So in terms of that as an explanation, I think it is useful. Okay, so then we move on to, again, more, quite recent ones. And it's talking about the increasing crime rates and the reasons why there has been an increase in female crime. And the main one here is Adler and this idea of the liberation thesis. And this is the idea that as women have gained more freedom in society, female crime rates have increased. So basically, less social control equals more crime. That's the explanation for Adler. Similarly, Jackson, and this is a kind of classic study as well, talked about ladettes, so females who took on board previously masculine traits, drinking, swearing, antisocial behavior, anti-school behavior, anti-education subcultures. And Jackson, it's a really, really good study. If you haven't looked at that, I strongly recommend that you look into that in detail, because it does talk about class, and it talks about this idea of kind of fear of failure, which is driving this behavior. So they are the reasons why, there's been an increase in female crime rates. However, some have criticized the liberation thesis for, because, what about class? Is there less social control on all women? What about poorer women from different backgrounds? Do they have less social control? Some people have said actually this is kind of classist, and it doesn't take into account that there's a variety of different experiences. It doesn't, perhaps for a certain type of women there has been a liberation, but not in the same way for all. Okay, so moving on to the final explanation, and this is the other side of that coin, is why is it that men commit more? Okay, so the explanation really is that sociologists have put forward is masculinity. So the key kind of study here is Messerschmitt and hegemonic masculinity, where traits like individualism, aggression, violence, this kind of macho behavior is a reason why men, particularly young men, get involved in criminality at a higher rate than women do. also to extend that, you've got this idea and the concept of the crisis of masculinity, who been discussed by Winlow and others, which is arguing that the decline of traditional working class kind of masculine careers has led to a need to express masculinity elsewhere. So by fighting, by being aggressive, violence, those kind of things. And then in terms of evaluation of this point on masculinity, can it explain all crime? Does this explain all crimes? Does it explain corporate crime? Does it explain green crime? Does it explain, can it explain crimes that are committed by women? I don't think it can explain all crimes. So I hope that's been useful. If you've got any questions or need any clarifications or any comments about this, please just leave a comment below. Thank you for listening.